Oh yeah, I get my little countdown guy. That is
That's kind of cool.
quite a delay.
Mm-hmm. All right, go
A
ahead.
whole 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Evening. Sorry for the delay for you folks tuning in from remotely. We are, and you'll have to forgive us, there's about maybe a 10-15 second delay. So if you all have been typing or whatnot, it'll probably just be coming through. But we are off and running. So hello to you all in the room. Hello to you all on the internet. And tonight we'll be talking about edTPA, general submission stuff. We'll be talking about video compression and trimming and all the do's and don'ts for that. Oh yeah, I'm John Giger. CET Lab is where you're joining me right now, and you guys can, if you decide to come in, I'll plug it at the beginning here, and then I'll remind you at the end. We're open every day, Monday to Friday, especially as deadline looms. You might want to take advantage of that. And you can email us at cet@depaul.edu. So I guess we'll kick off with a couple of things. You guys first are probably familiar with the Student Teachers D2L site. So one of the things to point out is that a lot of the stuff we'll be talking about here is on this page. If you decide to change quarters or something later on too, there is one of these for every quarter of student teaching, but the video resources do not change. So fear not, we will update and upload things on there for you. Well, here's our friendly reminder of tonight's thing. But under content, you're probably very familiar with the top portion, which is a lot of the different modules and forms from cooperating teachers, but sandwiched in between is the edTPA resources tab. And when I go to there are two submodules in particular that you should pay attention to. The first one is, other than just the generic resources that are, sorry, the smart board's being a little weird. There's a couple of resources on the top here in terms of academic language, analytical writing, just some generic help guides. But the ones that we'll point out tonight are the video resources, and then after that, the submission resources. So a lot of the stuff that we'll be talking about tonight will be on here. There'll be a couple of different video clips as well because everybody uses different devices. So I'm going to go over Mac, and I'm going to go over, well, and James will go over some of the PC as well. But really the underlying thing to walk away with tonight is the process and kind of the overall nuts and bolts. Don't get bogged down on if my platform has this one little quirk or not when it comes to your video editing. The big thing is just to make sure that you're getting the right things amassed and that you are understanding the overall process. We can help you through the individual steps as you go along. So a couple of extra things to remember. The videos that you'll be doing, that's part of task 2. That's what everybody focuses with CET on. Your best friend is your phone. So if you haven't finished your recording stuff yet, we have little tripods and mounts and things. You can get those from us. If you decide to use some other device, that's fine. GoPros, I don't know, handy cams from your dad's collection, that's fine. Just know that at the end of the day, you have to be able to take the video off of the device, save it to a computer so that you can edit it. That said, remember the placement of the camera within the room does kind of matter a little. You want to be able to put it in a spot where it's going to capture most of the class and yourself. You know, having students in the class does matter. Otherwise, it's just a video of you talking to a camera. We've had that happen a little bit. That said, we don't want really a lot of identifying information on students. So things like jerseys with names on the back, or if everybody's wearing school logos on their shirts, which sometimes happens, you know, if they're all wearing sweatshirts and stuff, have them turn them inside out. If there's one kid who happens to have a particularly loud identifying something logo or name on their clothing, you know, put them outside the camera shot or something. You don't have to move that child, but just, you know, orient your camera in a way that it's not going to pick them up. The other thing is think about the room itself. Sometimes we have people like PE. I was taking a shot of the room and I completely forgot about the fact that the school logo and name is in the middle of the floor in my shot. Yeah, probably not a great idea. There are ways around this. We trimmed the shot in a way so that it was not, it literally was cutting the students off at the ankles. It still shows them, the teacher, it was fine. But little things like that, the walls might have posters with motivational things and all. So just take a survey as you're recording. The other one to remember is it's got to be continual. So if you're going through and you've taken, I don't know, a 20-minute video and the best part is the last 10 minutes, then use the last 10 minutes. You can't cherry pick from a bunch and mash them together. Nor in the middle, if you start sneezing and coughing, sorry, you're just gonna have to deal with it if that's the clip that you want. Obviously, if it's not, then don't worry about it. Same goes though if you get interrupted by somebody. If it's like your principal coming in and like says, "Can I talk to you for a few minutes?" and then you get like, "All right, you got to restart here." But some people wonder about paraprofessionals or someone else kind of coming in and out of the room in the background, not disrupting the lesson is the key part. So as long as you keep going and it's not impacting anything, then you're fine. Let's see, other content things. Oh, speaking of placement, you guys are over the hurdle for air conditioning season. So, hooray, don't have to worry about that. But there are other things in your room that might make noise, like we had one person who decided to put their GoPro on top of the projector, and cool artistic effect, right? No, it just was a loud humming noise through the whole thing because the projector was vibrating the camera. So, test your shots first. One other thing some people do ask about is, well, what if I set up my phone and I started recording and, am I able to, like, I fiddled with it a bunch. Like, we'll talk about trimming. You can cut the beginning and the end. If you start and then you start the lesson and then you actually go back and start again, like, you can use that whole next part. That's fine. It's just you can cut from the ends only. And that also goes for, some people wonder about, like, well, what if my teacher was holding my phone as I go around the classroom? Is that fine? Motion shot. Yeah, that's totally fine too. As long as they suddenly don't turn it around and are like, hey, so those are a couple of things that come up. Really, overall, it's just make sure it's a continual shot. Save all the stuff that you do from scratch or from the original before you start editing. So my underlying philosophy is as soon as you're done recording all that content, even if you think it's garbage, because you might want to chop it up later for smaller clips or something, take it, save it in a special digital corner of your hard drive that you're not going to deal with, and then make copies of those and edit those, because if you screw up your editing, you can go back to your original. Mm-hmm. And then we can go ahead and we can work on some of the other files and things. That's also good to just have a backup in case the place you're working on the regular stuff hiccups and eats your file, you have it. And then also if you have to do retake, or not retake, a resubmission for a different task or something, and you need to re-upload it, you have the copies of the content that you can just easily re-upload. So that's kind of the overview of some of the do's and don'ts for video how-to. I would say it doesn't take that long to do the actual editing work because you're only doing the beginning and the end. The thing that takes the most time is the actual transferring and the uploading and the process component. So underneath, I don't know if I can get it to go, there's also the submitting edTPA's submodule here. And the first one you'll see, well, actually before you see that, you'll see there's a Pearson phone number here. So I will give a quick roadmap for you. Phase 1, you do all this editing. You're working with your seminar instructor. You're working with your field experience setup and all. And then you're going to take all that material and you're going to bring it in and start putting it into Digication. During that first part, when you're originally gathering info and all, you can work with the CET, you can work with your coordinators, your faculty members, whoever, and then when you're uploading into Digication, you can work with us in the CET. And then once I'll go through this in a few, once you go from transferring from Digication to Pearson, you have to talk to Pearson because it's in their hands at that point. So instead of panicking and looking up the 30 different Pearson phone numbers online, this is the one that you would use if something happened. And we'll talk about the common ones, but they're not common at all. It's just there to help you in that moment of panic. So above that, though, is the edTPA mock module. And this, oh, I shouldn't use my knuckle. Sorry. I got overeager. Okay. So this is a fake, I feel like something's stuck to the smartboard. This is a fake submission module for you to be able to walk through the steps and get the idea of what's going on through the different components. You're not going to actually be uploading anything to this, and it has no consequence. This is just for your benefit. It's also to help me remember that I cover everything for you guys, so it's a win-win. And in this case, we're picking up after you've gotten your authorization key from the edTPA site. So that's something you should have already. You should have gotten that through student teaching and all. But if you don't have it, go ahead and work on getting that, and you'll need to put that into Digication later. So I'm going to go, and I'm going to go to Digication as step 2. So step 2, after you've gotten your edTPA key all figured out, is you need to hop over to DePaul.digication.com and log in. And most of the rest of your DePaul time has been spent probably in the ePortfolio realm of Digication. But today we're going to do the other side of it, which is the class-facing side. So on the top, I'm an admin here. I got a bunch of extra portfolios and things. Don't worry about that. But underneath, you'll see that there is a My Courses section, and you will see in there your seminar or capstone. I'm going to go to this demo course because that's where I have my little fake setup there. But when you get to your course, you should see some boxes like this, and on the far right is edTPA. So when I click on that, you're going to see a couple of different names. From my perspective, you should just see your name. If you click on that tab and it brings up a big blue box that says, "Welcome to Digication. Do you want a tour?" Just no, we're doing it right now. Don't worry. Just click no thanks and move on. Unless you really feel like going through that, which don't let me stop you. You will see your name on there, and you will see then we're picking up here a Start New edTPA Materials big blue button. This is going to be your key to, or your gateway to attach your handbook to Digication. So in a way, we're digitally throwing our handbook that you've been looking at on, D2L and all that before. We're just putting that template into Digication and then filling in all of our materials. And then once it comes down to it, we're going to at the end submit all that to Pearson. And a lot of people say, why the heck are you doing it through there when I can just do it through Pearson? To begin with, this is a safety gap. If you screw up something with your submission, if you need somebody to come in and look at some stuff like your instructor, this is a good way, you can dispute your credit card statement, and all that. It's kind of like that on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add new edTPA materials. And it's going to give me a couple of choices from a drop-down. The first one, and most of you should have done this already, but I'm going through in case we had latecomers. National Handbook, we're not in Washington. National. And then pick the correct handbook for you. It's not letting me look at it. So anyway, just remember that if you accidentally add the wrong one, it's fine. Some people have even double added handbooks. They freak out. Don't worry about it. The big thing to remember at the end of the day is that all your content is in one handbook load to send to Digication. So if you start in one and then realize you've made a terrible mistake and you want to go on to another, you don't even have to worry about deleting the old one. Just move into the next one, do it there, and get ready to go. So I'm going to, 5. When you load your content in here, then, we're going to pretend that I'm agricultural education. You'll have a little more button on the side, and this is about as far as you should have gone with your student, seminar capstone. So you put in your key here. It's also important to remember that you can do this loading of content as well without the authorization key working. You just can't submit until it works. So for now, let's pretend like you joined in late, you're just getting all this set up, and you realize, I didn't have my voucher, I didn't have all this set. That's okay. That's a different part. You can talk to Kate Liston about that. For now, you can continue to use this as a place to dump your content. I'm going to pretend like I'm validating my key, and then we get the big long list. So I'm going to hop back over to Real Education, and we're going to look at, like, I don't know, Megan's thing here. Okay, so you see that this is going to mirror pretty much all the different tasks that you need to go through. Don't trust your neighbor on this one. I say that jokingly, but also a little seriously. We like to work in groups, we like to work together, but the truth is maybe your friend does not have the same handbook as you, and this task in particular is where it might come to get you. Pay attention to your handbook's requirements, especially with the video count. We've had some people that they recorded one and they actually needed two, or vice versa. They were freaking out, they did 2 different clips or 3 clips, and they only needed 1. So take a quick look and make sure you're doing that. Under here, they do give you a little hint as to what you can upload. 500 megabytes is the size limit per file. If you went over, let's say that, and we'll talk about this in just a few, I recorded a great 30-minute lesson plan on my phone, and I download it to my computer, and it's 2.5 gigabytes. That's okay. We can compress that and get it down into the correct size. But it's 500 per file. So if you have to upload 2 files, you technically can upload a total of 1 gigabyte. The other one is it has to be a pretty generic file type. They have a bunch listed here. I will say that movie, MPEG, MPG, MP4, those standard ones are good. Windows Media, don't do that. You ripped something from your dad's camcorder and it's in some weird SFRT extension or something. I don't know, just stick with the tried and true. If you find that you got some wonky file format off of your device and you want to transfer that, bring it into us, or at least tell us, we can get that codec changed. So I guess that kind of takes us to the editing component.
Before we do that,
I was going to say, do we have any questions?
we do. This one comes from Craig online. He
All
says, what if the image orientation changes in the middle of the clip, for example, from portfolio to landscape, but it's like in the middle of the clip? What should he do?
Okay, that's a good question. If the orientation of the image changes in the middle of the video, I don't believe that's too much of an issue. We can, because you want it to be a continual shot, we probably wouldn't want to edit that.
Right.
But that said, if it's changing at the beginning or if it's a majority of the clip and then it switches at the end, we can swap it to the majority view and then you'll just deal with that. You can also annotate a lot of these videos through, extra, I don't know, like if you needed to caption something or if you needed to put in a note about something, that's totally fine. We've had some people that they say, the student in the back of the room had this one particular comment that was really important and it's a little garbled. You can add comments on that and stuff. So annotating and putting in extra, like an FYI for the evaluators is not uncommon. I can double check on that orientation one. But I have a feeling that if we switched it in the middle, they would take that as a destructive change, like an edit, and that wouldn't be good. So, I know, it's kind of a bummer, but I don't think they'll judge you if they all just sit there and have to turn their heads. Do you have any others from online right now?
No other questions. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, what about you?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So the next part, our GA James will come up and talk about the actual editing component. And like I said, different devices look different, but the ultimate thing to walk away with is that we're looking at trimming and compressing. And don't worry if you look amazing or terrible. Don't worry about as long as you can be heard. If there's sound differences and things, we can get around that through captions and whatnot. But the big one is just to take a deep breath, go through 500 megabytes and whatever your handbook says. So, all right, so I'll pass it off. James, you want to
All right.
take the helm?
Yeah, I'm going to introduce myself real quick. Hi, I'm James, everybody. I'm going to talk about edTPA editing and what you can do if you have a large file, you need to compress that thing, and we'll talk about trimming. I'm the one manning the camera, so I'm going to change the scene here. All right, so we can show just the computer. All right.
I'll help you out.
Okay, so the first thing you want to make sure that you focus on is, first of all, you want to make sure you have the correct video formats. And I know John talked about some of the formats already, but we have the FLV file, ASF, QuickTime, movie, MOV, MPEG, MP4, M4V, or WMV. Those are the acceptable video formats. Another really important thing, and if you don't have your file size under control, you're going to get your submission rejected. So the file size is 500 megabytes or smaller. If it's over, it's going to get rejected. So you want to make sure that your file size is smaller than 500 megabytes. So let me show you what that looks like here, how you can get that information. Let me see if I can.
Oh yeah, sorry, I made it full screen for you.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so let me find my movie file that I went ahead and download. So this is on a Mac computer. So what you want to do is you want to just go ahead and right-click on the video, and then click on Get Info right here. And this is going to tell you the size of the file. So this one is 2.2 megabytes, which is way under. So this is good. So when you look at this, you want to make sure it's less than 500 megabytes. Anything over, you're going to need to compress the video. So let's talk about compressing right now, since we're talking about it. So this is when you open up QuickTime, okay? So right now the file is at 2.2 megabytes. So what I want to go ahead and do is compress this down. So what you're going to do is you're just going to export as, and then you're just going to select a lower resolution. So you can see the different options here. There's 4K. If you're shooting on 4K, forget about it, okay? Because it's not going to go through. It's going to be a really big file, and you're going to have to compress that video. Then there's 1080p, 720p, and then 480p. So in this case, let's say you have a file that's about 900 megabytes. You're going to want to go ahead and obviously compress that. So how you do that here in QuickTime is you simply click on File, you go to Export As, and then you click on 480p. Okay. And then it's going to ask you to save the file. So you're going to go ahead and create a name.
And this should be the copy of whatever your original is.
Correct. In this case, I'm just going to call it compress so we know which one's which. Okay, and then you're just going to hit save. It's going to do its little thing here. This is obviously a small movie clip, so it did it quite quickly. And here it is. Well, actually, that doesn't make sense. It's actually 4.5 megabytes.
Well,
it should be smaller.
It would be smaller.
So this demo didn't really work.
Oh, I know what. Okay.
What did I do wrong?
It's the way that, because that's one of those stock ones. I bet it unpacked a bunch of stuff.
Okay, but trust me on this,
Yes.
folks. Watching at home. This will work.
It does work.
Okay, so you're just going to go to QuickTime, again, File, Export As, and you're going to select the lower resolution, and that should give you a size that is smaller. So again, let's recap. How do you get the file size? You just go ahead and click. You click on the, you right click, and then you click on Get Info. And then you look right there, and that is your file size. Anything over 500 is going to get rejected, so your goal is to get below 500.
And it's worth mentioning that you should compress at the end of the process.
Correct.
So if you have to do editing, which we'll touch in just a moment, then you want to compress at the end if you need to. However, if you don't need to edit and you just need to compress, you can continue to do this process. We also have some heavy-duty compression software here if we need to help you out even more, if you just can't get it under that threshold.
Absolutely. And just remember, don't shoot on those 4K cameras, okay? All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is recommended web browsers to use. This is on the list. I guess that's for edTPA.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you want to make sure you're using Google Chrome or Firefox. I think we went over that.
It won't let you in Digication now go through Safari, so at least that's a nice little fix.
Right, and so we have recommended editing programs. Some of your options for Macs, you have iMovie, QuickTime that we just saw right here. This is QuickTime, and then for Windows, there's the Windows Movie Maker, or I'll give you some options real quick. So let me show you some of them. The first one is NCH software, and these are free. The last time I checked.
No, they are.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go ahead and type NCH. This is if you're on a Windows computer. NCH software. .com/video. So this is an alternative if you're using a Windows computer. You know, obviously you're not going to have like probably QuickTime or iMovie, and let's say you don't like Windows Movie Maker. This is another option right here. This is the NCH software. This actually will work on a Mac too.
Yep.
Supports all popular video formats. Remember we talked about the video formats, and this will allow you to edit your clips, trim them. And obviously here we're not editing and clipping in the beginning. That's a big thing that John talked about. We're just trimming in the beginning and trimming at the end, but no actual clipping or trimming in the beginning, in the middle, because it's going to be rejected.
And if you are a DePaul student and you have purchased the Creative Cloud Adobe Premiere as part of that, that's a heavy-duty one, but it certainly will also cover all of these. We're just showing you some of the more free, simple-to-use ones.
Just alternatives out there.
Yeah.
This next one is VSDC Video Soft Dev. .com, videosoftdev.com, and this is another alternative for a Windows computer where you can pretty much do the same thing. You need to edit, so you can just use this one as well. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about trimming, which is probably one of the most important things. You want to find, obviously the clip that you want to submit. So you're going to have like probably an hour's worth, and you want to trim it down to like 20 minutes. So I'm going to again use this small little example here. You're going to click on Edit, and then you're going to click on Trim. This is again QuickTime if you're using a Mac computer. It's essentially going to be the same for other video editing software. It's just the key thing is you're going to be just trimming the beginning and the end, but nothing in the middle. Okay? So it's really easy on QuickTime. I mean, you're literally just dragging to where you wanted to start on the timeline and where you wanted to end. So this clip was 30 seconds. Now I've got about 12 seconds trimmed down. Just click trim.
Yep.
And that's it. That's the trimmed version here. All right. So
And then
again,
would be a perfect good way if you also needed to compress at this point to just go ahead and save it under the lower file size, and you're done.
Yep, you can go to export 480p and you're done. So that's essentially it. And of course there are video resources on D2L, so make sure to check D2L. There's videos that you can also follow on there. And again, you want to make sure it's under 500 megabytes. Any questions out there?
So if I export, because if I've already saved it to my desktop and I export, would I just, is it fine with that?
And then it'll ask you where, and then you'll save it wherever, and it will do that.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, James.
All right, you're welcome.
All right, so real quick, let me do some housekeeping here. I'm not going to save that. Sorry, I love your edits, but we don't need it.
Does this mean anything? If I resaved it after I trimmed once, do I need to do anything to this?
I think it's just letting us know that that was exported.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to take you through the home stretch here. And you're going to do this for as many files as you need to compress, as many times as you need to compress them, and then we'll upload them all into Digication. This is part one of the time consuming. Because what you're doing is so the first thing that will chew up a lot of time is compressing these. The larger the file that you have to compress, the more time it takes for the computer to sit there and grind away at it. But then that whole thing needs to get moved onto the internet. I'm going to say it that way. And so that file transfer, depending on the file size, could take a while. I've had some people also, if your internet speed's a little slow, that could be a couple hours. You know, if you've got a big clip, like a 30-minute lesson, and you're hauling it on there. So that's one consideration of why not to do this the night before. Let's revisit another consideration of why not to do this the night before. All that file stuff that you're moving into Digication also has to get transferred over to Pearson, and that takes some time. So let's say I've uploaded all this stuff. First thing people ask is, do I have to close or can I close things while it's uploading? No, you need to leave stuff while it's uploading. But once it's uploaded into Digication, you're manipulating it in Digication. So you don't have to keep re-uploading after that. Where am I? I am, next page. Come on. I gotta recalibrate this. Okay, so at the end, you're going to see at the top a blue progress bar that's going to be filling up. Just ignore this big blue thing on the top for a second. You're going to see a progress bar as you add stuff to your edTPA tab. This is not how close you are to being done with edTPA. This is how much of the slots for content you have filled within the edTPA tab. So this is just a good way to make sure, did I get everything in there? Okay, 100%. I know all this stuff is in there. Another reason that it's nice to have Digication is because let's say in just a moment that you uploaded the wrong document. It's not going to tell you that you put a picture of a cat where your video should have gone. It's just going to say, cool, you put something there. Let's move on. So in a moment, you're going to have to, through the Pearson site, go back and check all of this. In this case, I'm going to have 100%, and at the bottom it said, prepare for transfer, and I check that off, and I go to transfer my files. This large prepping your transfer blue box appears, and then this is the waiting game. This is where people start to freak out because we expect things to move like that these days. This can take technically up to 48 hours to transfer to Pearson. I rarely see it go past 24. Again, it could happen. My rule of thumb is if you cross the 16 to 20 hour area, if you're coming up on a day, and I'd say give it a good wait, especially if you're doing it at slow speeds. If you're coming up on a full day's waiting, keep an eye on it, let us know. One thing that will happen, this process works that Digication now, with your activation key in there, it knows who you are with Pearson. So Digication says, here is all of Jim's stuff, and passes it off. And Digication goes, okay, cool, I have Jim's stuff, and hands a little receipt back to Digication. This will, when it gets that receipt, turn green. And it's like, yeah, it's all over there. Sometimes the receipt gets lost in transit. So if the blue box is still there, what you should do is your first thing is to go to the edTPA site and see if your content is there. If your content is there, don't even worry about the fact that the box is still blue. Just move on. It transferred successfully, and Pearson just dropped the receipt. If the stuff is not there and the box is still blue after like a day, then we can look into why it's taking so long. But what I'm going to have to do is go in. Come on. Next. There we go. You'll see a mirror image of what you just did in Digication in Pearson's edTPA interface, but everything is going to be loaded in the correct task and step sections. You're going to have to review each one of these, and that's just a spot check. You look and you say, yes, this is the correct file. No, this is not. Hopefully it's all yes. If it's not, we just resubmit the files to Pearson. And so you have no penalty, you're not out any voucher or anything like that. I will say that when you submit your edTPA stuff to Pearson, it locks your content on Digication so that it doesn't get screwed up. If you have to resubmit, we just email real quick Digication support and say, hey, I'm Jim in Capstone EDU 101 and I need my tab unlocked. And they go, great, and they turn around, and that's usually within an hour or two. They're really fast about it. And then you can go again and do the process. But there is a little percentage bar that comes across as you do each one of these tasks in Pearson. You're going to review the transfer, click on the creepy little blue eyes to look at each document, and then when you get done at the I think this is the end of my mock module, yeah, you'll have a little confirmation blurb, and then you'll have a ready to submit as well. So once you've gone through all of them, you'll have the option to ready submit everything. I didn't write on the board. I don't think actually you can see it in this shot. So email addresses to know. This is all on the D12 site. Our email is cet@DePaul. Pre-Pearson submission. That's a great one. Video compression, general, calm me down. I'm losing my mind because I think I completely broke my portfolio. Like that's what we're here for. But after you submit to Pearson, then we need to go into the Pearson realm. Now, if you have anything with Digication as a problem, so let's say Pearson says, never got the stuff, and Digication's like, I sent it, we might have to interact with both. But if you need to unlock the edTPA tab or something, that's support@digication.com, and that'll also be on there. So there's no penalty for like contacting any of these people. That's what they're there for. But you can see why having a couple of days before the submission deadline helps, because if we do have to resubmit stuff to Pearson, it's good to have the extra built-in full couple of days. Yeah, usually if anything went wrong, they'll let you know, like very loud digitally, like this file did not transfer, so then we just redo it. So there's nothing to really worry about. Questions online, questions in person?
What was the part when you said that you won't have to pay again, or you won't have to pay another
As
voucher?
long as you have not submitted your thing for review. If anything goes wrong before that, that's all still, like, we can resubmit to Pearson as many times as we want. But as soon as we submit the Pearson content, then you've basically like cashed your voucher in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Now, if something went wrong on their side, obviously there might be exceptions to that, but you know, just imagine it that way.
If like you submit on October 11th. Oh, well.
Yeah, it's yeah. Other questions, concerns? Again, it's not that bad. It's just kind of sitting down, taking a deep breath, and doing it in the chunks. Back up your stuff. Keep a folder of the originals. Don't touch that sort of stuff. Trim just from the ends. You can always cut. It's like your hair. You can always keep taking stuff off, but you can't put it back on. So, you know, if you find that you're coming in under the, or just over the threshold or something, maybe you can trim more off. If you don't need to, we can keep mashing it digitally down until it fits into the virtual shoebox it belongs in. And then, yeah, really just the rest of it is, you know, maybe another one that I point out at the orientation is naming of files and stuff. Name them in a way that you know which ones go with which tasks. It's easy to get lost in that. Some people just, it's a helpful reminder. Yeah, it's not a, it's just, it's a lot. It's not,
It's a lot to take
each
in.
chunk, yeah, each chunk will be manageable. We did have, I think it's still on here. I think I still have the little timeline. Oh, I do. Look at that. Hooray. Yeah, for those of you who are visual people, there is a little timeline if you want it. just about like uploading, submitting, verifying, submitting, all that. It's really, I took like 10 seconds to build that, so it's not gospel truth or anything. But edTPA resources is your go-to for this. And if you do find that like something's going wrong with your device or whatnot, you can always come back. It's all full circle to come back into the CET lab. And we're here Monday through Friday, late into the evening, early in the morning. Fridays we leave at 5 because we're not cruel and we're not going to sit here until 8 p.m. on a Friday. The weekends we're closed too, but we still get emails. So if you also can't make it, if you're a commuter and like I can't schlep into Lincoln Park for this sort of stuff, we do have Box through the university and Google Drive, and also we can virtually transfer your files back and forth. Just remember, the larger those are, the more time it takes for us to get and edit those. All right.
Question:
yes.
What about last quarter we had some students came in talked about blurring the faces and making sure that when you film that you're not shooting
Yeah, how do you
faces
blur
and
on
kids'
quick
logos.
Yeah,
And
so people worry about, and I talked a little about it, but people worry about identifying information a lot. You know, stuff's gonna get in there. Just thinking about if you call them, you know, hey, Thomas, it doesn't matter. There's a million Thomases in the world, relatively speaking. Like now, if I say, okay, Thomas Eckert III, please, it's like, all right, now you've just called out that's not cool. Like that identifies them. Visually, you know, a lot of people shoot from the back of the classroom up to the front, no problem. You know, identifying info, if there's somebody who clearly like didn't want to be in the shot or something and you can't get it out, we have guides on blurring stuff. I will say that the more stuff moves, the harder it is. Sometimes it's just easier to cut it out of the frame entirely. So there is no requirement for the actual size of the video, like visually. Now that said, don't send a little thumbnail. That's just mean. But if, like with the PE example, we trimmed the bottom of the entire clip so that it got rid of the floor, and that sort of solved the problem. So if you really believe deep down that like that shot that you took was the best lesson in the world, and then that one kid on the side is like got his jersey on and it's ruining the whole thing, I mean, we can cut poor Thomas out of the frame, but yeah, that's just, it happens. You know, if you feel uncomfortable about it and you want to clarify, we can try to clarify on a case by case, but it is still pretty subjective in that middle gray area. Other ones I'm forgetting now?
I'm trying to think.
I think that's about it.
Compression was big last year.
Yeah.
Blurring.
Is blurring something you can do on your own, or
You can do it on your own, yeah. It just depends how comfortable you are with video editing type stuff. Usually what we can show you how to do is, let's say that there is a kid who's sitting in the middle bottom of the frame and all that, and you just want to blur out. We can put a big fuzzy box over them. Well, we can tell you how to do that and all, and then it just sits. It doesn't have to look pretty. Again, the reviewers don't care if it's like faded out nicely and trimmed and all.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we're just gonna like censor bar that kid. Just plop right over it. And we've done that before. Yeah, like there was a mascot on the wall, and we just put a big old fuzzy box over it,
bye-bye.
and that was it.
Okay.
So it's an option, but again, that will cut into anybody's video editing time.
What about like audio? Have any comments on audio?
I think it's just as long as you're understandable. So, you know, if I can hear your words and the students, and then, you know, accidents happen, maybe it dips briefly under, or whatever, as long as you get the lesson and the meat and bones of it, then you're good.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, well, digitally, we will hang out. We'll set the video off so that you're not just watching me walk around, but for another couple minutes, if you guys have any questions, because I know there's a delay, feel free to write in on the comment box to the side, and I think I pointed to the right side there. And then We will. I'm not a YouTube star. I don't know.
You are tonight.
Yeah. And also CET at DePaul. We can email you back and forth. And then I'll just hang around for a few more minutes here. So, okay.
We got movie
Adios,
night coming
internet.
up.
We'll see you
Movie
later.
night coming up.
And yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. That was
Yeah,
incredibly
no problem.
helpful.
And I'll just kill the.